2.
Good afternoon, friends of the Gathering of the Miami Valley. It is so good to be back. I'm here with a few of my friends today who are involved in a gathering and missed not being with you a couple weeks ago when we had to cancel based on Eric having a baby. Eric's got a son now, so we had to cancel Andre Davis from the Cleveland Browns. We will have him back scheduled coming up moving forward. So anyway, I'm with my friend Steve Queen, who's new to Springfield, Cody Hunt, very new to Springfield, and Chris James, who, well, you don't technically live here, but you've been in the area for a while, and we're just going to have a good conversation today, talking all things youth, gathering a little bit, so on and so forth. So, Steve, let's start with you. Well, tell us a little bit about yourself, background, and then we'll go from there.
All right. Well, I'm a native of Cincinnati, Ohio, born and raised. As far as pre-Jesus time, I was raised in Cincinnati, Ohio, and then we moved to Eastgate area, which is over east of Cincinnati. Came to know Christ about 9 years of age. Had an aunt that used to take me to church quite regularly. Went to, was one of the bus kids. Got picked up by the Baptist church,
Sure.
and was part of that. Had an uncle who was a Baptist minister as well. But straight away from Christ, about 12 years of age, straight away as a teenager, and then later met my wife, and we had our firstborn son, and I really felt like that I need to get back in church, and because I wanted everything to be different. For the way my life was, came from a broken home, parents divorced at 12. But after coming to know Jesus, I went to church one Sunday, and we drove in. We were there early. I just had this deep conviction in my heart, and wanted to get back to Jesus. And we went to church one Sunday. Got nervous. We left. And then the next
Was that more
Sunday-
based on something that was being said, or was that more just you and the Lord
It was
doing
just
business?
me and the Lord. I mean, it was just God was dealing with me in my life, and and I just. The very next Sunday we went to church, and that morning I went down and rededicated my life to Jesus, and
Amen.
hasn't been the same since. And and then my wife, she's like, well, maybe this Jesus thing is real. She was like, because she said, I got a new husband. So she was really excited about that. But after coming to know Christ, I was attending University of Cincinnati. I was studying to be a nurse, and but I felt a call at an early age, and God reconfirmed that call on my life, and I ended up starting my that summer. My dad's like, "So are you excited about your nursing?" I said, "Well, Dad," I said, "God's called me to preach." And he's like, "What?" I'm going to go to Bible college. He's like, "You don't need to go to Bible college to preach. All you need is your Bible." So, but I ended up going to God's Bible School in college in Cincinnati for a year, and then I went out to Nazarene Bible College and
Awesome.
and finished up out there, and went back to school later in life.
So was your dad supportive of that, or was he?
He was, and even today he's about. It's probably been about 12 years ago. He rededicated his life to the Lord, and just really neat to see how God has changed the trajectory of.
So say there's some domino effects in that, no doubt about it.
There really is, and I'm just grateful for what God's doing in my life. I've been in the ministry for 25 years. I've pastored, and I've also been a staff member. So it's been good, and now I'm on staff at High Street Nazarene as a minister of youth and families and associate.
Well, it's fun how none of the three of you had your eye on Springfield. It's not like
No, not at
you're a
all.
little kid, you're born here, or you're like, can't wait to be in Springfield someday.
Yeah,
Like,
yeah.
But that's how the Lord works.
Clark County,
Yeah.
stand up,
We've got people say it all the time. It's interesting. People, I think, get sent out of here a lot, but there's definitely people that God clearly
Amen.
sends here.
Amen.
So,
Amen.
Yep.
well, yeah, we'll hear more from you in a minute. Chris, give us your lowdown background, family, newly engaged son.
Wow.
That's true. I'll be 50 this year, so the big birthday coming.
Welcome.
Yeah, welcome.
I've been married for 25 years to to my wife Adrian, who I met when she was in 6th grade and I was in 8th grade. And
That's good. That had a chance to go astray. I met her when she was in 6th grade, and I was in.
we didn't date then.
There you go.
But that is when we met. We were both from the southwest side of Columbus, the real west side.
Is there like a hand signal for
Yeah,
Southwest
yeah,
Columbus?
Well, we just
Side.
go west side, but
There you
it's
go.
because it's the real west side. Anybody
Yeah.
that claims that from like Hilliard or Galway.
That's so funny.
No. But so from that area, we were in school together. We were in college together. I came out, started teaching math in Columbus, and then eventually in Hilliard, and then transitioned into administration. And so that's really what brought me out to Springfield, which really in South Vienna, but started as a principal at Northeastern High School. And around that same time, a few years after I got here, is when I got hooked up with this guy, and we've been friends ever since. But
Long time. I love those kind of relationships that God started right around the time the gathering got off the ground. So.
Yeah, and I
Over
had
a
no
decade.
idea. We've talked about it, but I didn't have any idea that was like something that was newer. Like I just had a
Soon we've been
conversation. I just thought it was something I was joining that had already been around. And Jeff always points out too that the locker room that I'm in, or one of the 2 locker rooms that I'm in now, is the longest going, but it's the second that was ever
Second
created.
that started.
Yeah, second started. I have 5 kids. I usually always used to always say that I have 5 and an import, because my nephew came to live with me back when he was in 4th grade, and so he was in our house. He's like my son, so that's
Awesome.
That's 6 in my number.
Awesome.
And so now they're getting a lot older. So I've got 3 that are out and 3 that are in, even though the outs still keep coming back a lot. The testimony for me would be, I was not raised really in the church other than a few times, the Easter and Christmas, maybe, just maybe. I remember being forced into like a horrible suit or something that I would have hated to put on back then. And I really, very similar to kind of what you had said, I think. When we got married and had my son, I always believed in God, but I didn't have a relationship, a personal relationship at all. It would just been like the belief that there is a God, and that. The way I grew up, and I wanted it to be different. I think that's what the words you use. I wanted it to be different because, being a father changed everything. Sure. And I remember often I've said, it's kind of, you hear saved by the Son, and I know we mean Jesus, but partly I was saved by my son, my first son, because of the desire to want it to be different for him.
Amen.
And any of my own kids. Really, really worried that I would be deficient as a father in what I didn't know. And I think that one of the things we were talking about is that if there wasn't anything back then that I feel like I always try to think of like what was the foundation or anything that led me into a certain direction, but it was. I do have an uncle, or I do have an uncle, he's still alive, that planted some seeds and kind of talked about, not just from a spiritual side, but finding truth and seeking out the truth. And some of those types of things kind of come back to me, of wanting to know what the truth was. And then when I'm, as a father, wanting to kind of introduce my kids to real and what real things, what really is true and important in life. So wanting to be a better father and doing those types of things led me to sort of church shop.
Amen.
You mentioned something that made me think of my time too. We went into some churches because we were looking at these different churches, and we too got up and left a few, or not in the middle of the service, but like we got up, and when we left, we just felt bad. Like we didn't really feel like we belonged. So it was kind of hard for us to find where we felt like we could just learn, because my wife was the same as I was. We didn't grow up with any of that, and we wanted to go feel like we could go somewhere and learn what we just didn't know. And eventually we did find that, and since then we just been trying to grow. Cool. And I think time wise, it was just a great. I mean, God put Jeff in my path as well, because back then it was like, this is baby Christian time, and I am just trying to learn. And so learning by joining that church, and also by learning by so many of the men in the gathering, really, really helped me grow as a Christian man.
What's interesting as you're talking, and we're going to get into youth culture and where we are in COVID season here, it's interesting thinking about, and I've never thought of this exact kind of thinking before, but it's almost like we should just go to hospitals and wait in birthing centers. I don't know about you guys, but I hear it all the time. People that came to Christ because they knew they wanted something different or better for their kids, and it's like, well, why did you want that now, but you didn't want it then, knowing that was coming? And I just think, like, man, let's just go set up tents and shops and birthing centers. Not that we can do that right now, but let's just go to the hospital or Ohio Valley or whatever. Well, Ohio Valley doesn't deliver, but at Mercy, and just be ready when people start having babies.
It's
So,
not a bad idea.
yeah. Cody, talk about you. You're brand new to Springfield.
I am.
So give us a little background of family and
Sure.
and when we said the 50 Club, you're like what, 3 decades, 4 decades?
I'm 2 decades behind. I just turned
Man, you look
30
so young.
last
I wish I
year.
looked like you.
Yeah, I wish I felt like you did
Well,
from an energy perspective.
There you go.
Cody Hunt. I am the new high school and young adult minister here at First Christian. I am the product of some of the stories that you guys are talking about. My parents, shout out to Joel and Lori Hunt, who wanted something different for their lives. Didn't necessarily know what it was, but God found them and rescued them and redeemed their stories, brought them together. I talk all the time. One of my very first memories is me as a 3 or 4 year old. I'm sitting around a baptismal as my parents were immersed into Jesus because they said yes, because he rescued and changed their story. And so I'm the product. I'm the second generation of that. I was the prototypical church kid, without a doubt. I never knew a time where I wasn't in the doors or involved. Children's ministry, youth ministry activities, all the like. Said yes publicly to Jesus through baptism on my 11th birthday, June the 3rd, 2001. Followed Jesus for the most part the entirety of my life, although there was a little stretch in college at IU where because I had lost some friends as a result of being the youth group kid and lost what I felt like were some opportunities to sort of live life. I wanted to do my own thing for a little while, but God is good. The Holy Spirit was laying the groundwork for a surrender experience for me on the Bloomington campus when I was a 20-year-old college kid. Ever since
I think
then,
we
yes,
need to get this closer for the camera to see.
That's
He's a Hoosier guy.
It's interesting you say that, Jeff, because I am a Hoosier in both senses of the word, both by birth and by choice. Till the day that
Take
I
that
die.
Purdue and Notre Dame and Butler people.
I ride or die, cream and crimson without question. We got a big one against the Boilermakers, which we can talk about a little bit later.
He does his homework, as we can tell. He does his homework.
Absolutely, I've got to. So, been involved with student ministry since about 2011, full-time since 2015. My wife and I were married in 2014. We've got 3 kids with a 4th on the way, which we're super excited about. I think that's me in a nutshell.
Wow.
Yeah.
Every time I'm around Cody, I'm just like, that passion just oozes. I'm like, I want to let it spray on me.
I don't know
So
about that.
let's rotate around. We'll kind of mix it up each time. So Chris, you talked a little bit about how you've been involved and got connected. What excites you about the cause? We'll speak more to the cause than the gathering itself, connecting men to men and men to God.
Well, I mean, sometimes I think that I used to think that I was like the perfect person to go after at the time that you did. But then the more that I've watched the gathering grow over the years and the men that have come in, the more I think that it's not that. It's more something that just makes sense to me in all men.
And what's that? Like, what do you mean?
Well,
that thing in all men?
Because there's so many things that we talk about in our locker room groups that I think you would never allow to. Well, maybe some people would, but I don't see a lot of those types of conversations happening. With men, at least in my.
Well, it's funny because in your particular 2 groups, one's newer, one's the longest one we've got that still exists. One's got almost all educators. There's 2 black men in there, so we've been doing a book about race that one of them decided to take the lead on helping us get. So we're getting into some raw stuff there. The other group, which is kind of a random hodgepodge of guys that's been around forever, we're deep diving into our hearts, doing the Heart of a Warrior. So you can taste it about as diverse and as far away as two groups could be.
Well, and I also, being in both of those groups, I've sort of taken back and kind of looked and remembered that the newer group is not where the older group is in terms of what I've seen us do. The more we were together for so long, the more intimate and the more the conversations became more comfortable, because you were just so comfortable with these friends. In a way that you just, I've shared many times things that you just wouldn't really. I feel like men don't naturally a lot of times open up in that way, and so it creates that feeling of brotherhood that you just feel like you've got.
Well, it's the shared experiences we have outside the group too. Like you hosted something one
Yeah.
time, Chuck's hosted something. We've been to the monastery. I think I've said before that group, the Monday morning group that meets the Kohatch. They've had more guys go to the monastery than any other group. So, in fact, I was thinking, flashing back the other day, thinking of that experience with you, with the water, the water getting tossed. I think it was from Chuck, and then
Chuck.
Doug Rastatter was there, and
Yep.
Chuck's taking holy water and like throwing it on Chris or whatever. And I'm
I
like,
come into
who does this in a monastery?
The balcony. I
Chuck.
open the door, and Chuck, who I had just met that day, didn't really say it, but throws water at me, and I didn't even know what was.
Nobody
going
else in the country is probably telling that story about the Abbey in Gethsemane. Only guys in Springfield.
right.
I'm pretty sure that Chuck thinks that's where the living water that Jesus talked about actually comes from, the monastery. I've never been
Yeah,
there,
but you've heard a lot about it.
He's been recruiting me, like the second
He
that
does.
it opens back up,
He
so
will.
that I can truly experience this life-giving river.
Yeah. Well, he's experienced and gone after a whole lot of people. So
Well, I think I would have been trying to, again, this is personal for me, that I feel like you feel like a student who's way behind when I first started. And so you're talking about, a 25, 26-year-old man trying to learn, what we're looking at, saying, all these people, and, like Cody, that you grew up with this. And so we didn't. And
That's
we're like,
right.
man, we know nothing. And we just, and so that along with the group and of men that I could learn from, I mean, they were going and sharing examples of things that they were doing, and maybe even just as, I'm just using this as an example, but in simple, just raising of their children, which is what I was really worried about. But I could tell that they were talking about stories, things that they've done, but it was coming from from a Christ-centered mindset, and that meant something to me. So I was learning, and that helped me learn more and more at a faster
do you
rate.
think in your case, Chris, because you've been involved about as long as anybody has in many ways, do you think you've checked off so many boxes that you see the value in each and everything? I mean, you've chaired at breakfast, you've hosted things at CTC, you've hosted, a social time at your house, you've been a donor, you've gone to the monastery, you've gone and I think probably gotten wings as we go do something socially out in public. You've probably done, I'm guessing you've done one of the movie nights, and we've gone down to one of the movies and watched one of those, what do they call them, the one night only Christian movie kind of. I mean, you've done a lot of stuff. You've been in two groups. I mean, is that like, do you see it as kind of a multiplier? Like maybe not one of those things stands out, but they all compile together. Like you can't walk into a room with 10 or 12 gathering guys and not know probably several.
Yes. Yeah, that's true.
Where these guys are brand new to Springfield and just getting connected. You can't go to any gathering setting and probably not know
it's true.
many people.
Yeah, sure. I mean, and even sometimes even if it was on the low end, I would at least recognize faces, and they would you could tell that they recognize me as well, just from being around these different types of things.
It had nothing to do with you being a Menudo, right? Because I think we've joked before. I think when I first met you, I said, weren't you one of the singers in Menudo back in the day or something like that?
Wow, no.
I think it's just why we want you around so much, and I think we've all joked about it, between your good-looking haircuts, the clothes, the face. We all want. So many of us want to be like you. So there you go.
That's a Spanish American. I am. Wow. So that's the Menudo line is sort of a racial slur, but we'll let it go.
No, come on now. So,
brother.
So Steve,
It's 2021. Goodness.
So Steve, you're the second newest guy here, because Cody's still the newest, but and you're the one who's not fully invested in kids, but you've done a lot of stuff with kids over the years. You have taken over as youth pastor as part of your many titles at High Street Nazarene. So we'll get more to youth in a second. But what's you and I have connected kind of right away. Just I see you understand the importance of reaching men. You understand the importance of those kind of connections. So what what speaks to you about that? You're in a new group that just got started
Yep.
on Mondays. I think we officially started December. So speak to that and your passion therein.
Well, even, I realize, even the conviction and how God dealt with me as a man helped me to understand the realization that, you win the man, you win the family,
Bingo.
And you've referred to that a bunch of
I
times
have,
to
I
me
have,
and in
and
settings.
And that's kind of been my passion in ministry. Even when in my moments as a lead pastor, is connecting men, whether it's through prayer breakfast or Bible study, those types of things. And that's something that I believe in, and I've vested my life in, and I know that as I connect with other men here in the community, it makes the community stronger.
Amen.
And and I believe that that's something we've got to invest in. And I'm really enjoying the gathering. The locker room, getting together with the guys and getting to know them, and being new, trying to learn all the names and the faces, and connecting. I've been working on that, but it's been a good thing.
Well, you're kind of in a unique group too, because your group almost exclusively has guys either in full-time ministry or they're a key significant volunteer at
Yep.
their church or in a parachurch ministry or whatever. And we had a great meeting Monday. I
Yep.
mean, unfortunately, you weren't able to be there, but man, like 3 of the guys got really deep, really quick,
Good,
and
good.
kind of shared their stuff and
That's awesome.
going through good stuff, but also
Sure,
challenges as well. So
Sure. Yeah, so it's been, and that's me too. I mean, I think, learning to, share what we're going through, and learning to walk together in this journey called faith, because, we can't do it alone.
Amen,
We need
brother.
each other.
Yep.
So, and I think it's, even, if I reached out to you as well, and our plans didn't work out, but, we'll get together and,
Absolutely.
and do lunch and,
Absolutely.
So Cody, let's fire it your way, then talk about it. You're new. You and I got together real soon because
We did.
I think double Jeffs, Jeff Mao and Jeff Lawson. Shout out to both of them as gathering guys, and
Good dudes, some of
wanted
the best.
wanted you and I to connect. And the first
Yeah.
time we tried to connect, I was not there. I think it was the day I was at Rudy's and I had to go to a meeting in Beaver Creek.
Yep.
But then you quickly jumped in, and we had a 3.5 hour, I think, lunch one day, and so on and so forth. So
Yeah.
I know you're kind of like Steve on a younger version, that you really understand the importance of connecting men to men and men to God. And if
Yeah.
you get the guy, you
Yeah.
get the. So
Absolutely.
speak about that and maybe your Tuesday group and whatnot.
So I am relatively new as far as locker room goes, and in fact, I think I've only been once or twice. But here's what I can speak to as far as mission of the gathering. Plenty of reasons why I'm on board, but I'll give you 2. One's just echoing what other guys have said. The first off is this: even though God moved through my parents, and I'm here as a product of what He did in and through their lives as well as my life, but the old cliche is true: it takes a village, without question. So I wouldn't be here unless God used a whole host of men who loved me and were real, vulnerable, honest with me, who desired to sort of foster and draw out this affection for Jesus and the church and young people. Because of that, I have seen value in men across the table sharing a meal together, doing life, another cliche, but being open and honest of giving windows into their world. And like Steve has said, like you have said in your conversation a few weeks ago, I think it was Vance Day.
Promise Keepers president.
Who said when you win men, you win not only the family, but generations afterward, which is deeply profound.
By the way, can the rest of you guys quote previous podcasts? That got me really excited when you just did that Vance Day thing. He's
So I
paying attention to our
couldn't-
podcast.
I'm trying. And also for me professionally, I realize one of the most effective ways for youth ministry to thrive is when men are connected to God. Obviously, we are discipling, modeling, training our students to be around lost people and to show and share the love of Jesus. But the primary means, the primary avenue for the kingdom to come on earth is through the men and their families. And so I understand that personally and also professionally.
You know, it's funny because I know this about all 3 of you. Definitely, Chris from seeing it, Cody from hearing it a little bit more, and Steve a bit as well. But it's funny when people say that. It's so easy for people to get ramped up and fired up and like, well, what does that mean about women, or does that mean whatever? And I'm like,
Yeah.
I know you guys love the women in your world, and that's
Amen.
no disrespect
Yep.
to women
Not
in
at
any
all.
way, shape, or form. So
Not at all.
let's jump into the kid thing, because I know we're going to kind of focus some time on that. And let's start with you on this one, Steve. So kids are not your focus, but it's definitely certainly part of what you do, and you've obviously done it full time as a focus in the past. What does that look like now? I messaged you guys ahead of time, and I was thinking about the expression, "the struggle is real." Speak to that phrase for you personally right now, what you see in the world of teenagers. Most of our effort, high school kids, high school, junior high, whatever.
Yep.
Well, I think part of the struggle is the great disconnect.
Yeah.
That we've been going through and experiencing. Even the whole different way of doing ministry. I went through, as a lead pastor, went through the beginnings of COVID and
Yeah, you transitioned in a funky time.
Yeah, I did, and even now, with parents and kids, I think the kids I've seen, what I've experienced here with the youth is, I think part of them, when they come to church, they want to be like their home. They want to have the freedom of not wearing a mask, being able to hang out, do those things, and as a leader, it's hard for us because we're being told, we got to follow these mandates, and I think sometimes some of these restrictions, people have a tendency to not participate, but we're working through that and finding ways of connecting with kids, whether it be in a small group setting. We just had staff meeting earlier today, and that's one thing I've been working on, is even spending time with some of these kids one-on-one or 2 or 3 in a gathering.
That to me is where the
where it
success in this
happens.
is, because
It really
I
is.
talked to Ben Bonham the other day, who Chris knows, who ran Young Life for years, and I said, back when I was doing Young Life, there were leaders who would just show up at at the school for the right activity, or they'd come to a Young Life club and say, well, this is where you hang out with the kids. They didn't pay the price to go to be relational. A lot of times not even go up to the school or whatever. And it's like, when you can't get to the school now, if you're not going to be relational and you think it's about programs, programs are either non-existent
exactly
or they're so totally different. I guess one of the things maybe you guys can respond to, and Chris, it'd be interesting from a teacher's perspective and an educator and executive director's perspective. Are you finding it to be different in this time with boys versus girls? Like, I know in my household, I've got 3 boys and a girl. My daughter, Leah, has done really well. Like, they're doing a Bible study on Zoom. She doesn't sweat that at all. It's almost as good as being together for her. My boys, and Greg Nurker and I talked about this the other day, it's kind of, we're checked out. Like, now, Alex, my youngest, is a very relational kid, so he's finding his time. When we had to quarantine, he was like, I'm getting with kids as soon as I can.
Yeah.
So he's very relational. Ethan and Jayden are not as much that way, so it's a little harder, and then they check out through Zoom. So I've seen my daughter flourish in one sense. I've seen the boys where it's been. So are you seeing differences with boys and girls as we get back to the question? Maybe throw that in a loop as well, Chris.
Well, I guess I look at it from different ways. One, in terms of students that I see. So at the CTC, when I am dealing with our students, it's I don't see a lot of difference between them. I see them all struggling with it.
What are the biggest struggles you see at CTC? Because you're talking about a different school there too, because you got kids coming from all over the county. It's not like they're all from Shawnee or they're all from Springfield or they're all from Northwestern. So they're having to mix and mingle and do different things anyway. So
Yeah.
what's
well,
been
I even made the joke with some of the kids that I talked to, and I said I need to make sure I write this down that in 2020 is when I said this, but I said in 2020 was the year that was the first time I heard so many students say, I want to come to school. And we, it's not that we don't know this, but you don't really talk about it as educators, is that, the school, kind of similar to a church when students are coming or kids are coming to youth programs. There's a lot more that goes on in the school that's not necessarily just the learning itself. There's learning, but the social interactions that they have. I mean, they're
The great food of the Jaguar room, which I'm missing.
That's true. But there's so much of that is positive in their own experiential learning and growing into how to deal with situations. To have them come, isolate them even when they come in, and then get them out of there as quick as possible where they can't, mingle with friends. Things at lunchtime that we joke and don't want to. Hey, great, we don't have to monitor, the lunchroom. No, monitoring the lunchroom, we may not like some of the things, but they need that. There's things they go through that they need to have. So I see that from just girls. Now my own kids, I will say that what I notice is that my daughter, so I wouldn't say my girls, but I only have one that's still in the house going to school, and she struggles a lot with just not being. Anytime her school says that they're not going in person anymore or something, and it's just all online, she struggles with that. She craves to be around.
She says it. It's non-verbally written on her. All
absolutely,
that.
Absolutely. Where both my boys are just kind of like, eh.
Yeah. See now again, that speaks to me about maybe there's something to be girls and boys handling this differently. Like the boys like, whatever. Versus your daughter, like, no, I want to be with them.
Yeah.
Cody, what about you? I mean, obviously you're going through this transition right now too. As a dad, your kids are younger.
Yep, they are.
You've experienced kids in Indiana. Now you're doing it here. Where are you seeing similarities from city to city?
And I definitely think the difference in not only state but also the size and the scope of the ministry that I was in. Lended themselves differently to these conversations and sort of sharing the burden and experiencing the burden of how our high school students are sort of navigating, walking through these. When I was in Wabash County, Indiana, I was in a very tight-knit high school ministry where our teenage girls in particular were very real about the mourning process of things they hadn't gotten to experience. And on top of
how are you using the word mourning there? Which one?
Mourning, M-O-U-R.
Okay, that's what I thought. Okay.
The loss of experience and how it's not only these rite of passages, if you will, that were taken away, but also Chris sort of alluded to this, the social interaction that plays psychologically, but also biologically as students are going through puberty, as they're growing up, all of these things that kind of regulate them and give them opportunities to sort of grow and expand who they are as people. Not having those and trying to navigate and deal with and grow and stay connected and all those things happening simultaneously resulted in, I think, what felt like death for a whole lot of teenagers.
So let me pause right here, because just whoever wants to jump in, answer this. Again, I told you guys we'll have a script, but we might go off script. If someone says, because you know this has been said, okay, every generation goes through tough stuff. These kids today just need to toughen up. Particularly thinking of COVID. How do you respond to that? Chris, you're shaking your head.
Well,
speak to that.
It's easy to say when you're not experiencing that right now, and you never will. So you can't really, walk in their shoes at all. People a lot of times forget that they developed themselves into the people that they are through, just like Cody's saying, through those same growing experiences that they need to have. So there's a lot more to it than just suck it up.
Is there? And I know we got to be careful because obviously probably the majority of people who are going to see this are going to be local. So maybe this is not a question you can answer. But can you think of an example where you've seen someone? I mentioned to some guys earlier, like today I woke up and I popped on Facebook before a meeting and I saw 4 sisters, actually 5, that I was connected to back in the day when I led Skim, and I was particularly close to 3 of them. Their dad just died of heart thing, pneumonia, and COVID. Can you think of a situation where there's someone where you're just like, man, my heart bleeds for this kid. Like they're going through, or maybe it's a family and it's a couple kids or 3 kids or whatever, where you're just like, well, I've never experienced anything like this. This poor kid, this poor family is going through whatever. That's like, man, how do you, because it's amazing to me. I'm just constantly thinking, like, if there's ever a time for us to experience empathy, it's now.
That's right.
And yet you feel like you see so many people not.
Yeah.
Well, I won't obviously name students or anything like that too, but going through this in the spring, when it just kind of hits you so fast as educators, we were worried about those seniors even graduating, things like that. And even since then, we've sort of tried to monitor academically the progress of students, and the really difficult thing. And there were so many stories. Once you go and dig deep, and that's what we had to do. Like we were trying to find out, like, this isn't just we went all online and doggone that kid, they're failing because they're just not doing their work. But we were having conversations with our own staff just to make sure that they're aware too, like, and they've been great, but understanding that
that would be way too simplified today to say something like that.
But people want that. They want things to be quick and simple. It's the same thing you said before, suck it up and everything. That's just a simple way without going deep. But we would be looking at students, and I would look at their records and go, this is awful. This student's never had anything but A's and B's in their life now, and it's not a socioeconomic thing at all. This is just, it can be any type. This could be a kid, with plenty, pretty high up on the ladder to somebody really just trying to make it, borderline homeless. It doesn't matter. They're all, not all, but so many are having those same struggles. And so when we would go, we'd look deeper into it, getting to the point where we're going to, we drove out to homes, asking questions. How can we better help you? Delivering internet stuff like a lot of schools were doing, delivering hotspots to those people that didn't have any connectivity, all that kind of stuff, because there were just so many different stories that found out, like, why is that student struggling so much?
So have you seen in that? Have you seen like people kind of rally and understand, like, more than ever, we're in this together?
Absolutely.
How have you seen that play out? Like, whether it's with your youth leaders, whether it's teachers, staff, kids themselves, who it's broken down walls where you mentioned the word socioeconomic, Chris, where labels and barriers are being busted apart. And people are just like, no, the top person, the bottom person, that doesn't exist anymore. We're all, speak to that, Cody.
I think where I saw it most clearly was the relationship that was sort of built and firmed up between schools and churches, particularly where families of students who struggled for all sorts of variety of reasons, whether it was food insecurity or whether it was I'm just dealing with things psychologically, just saying we are here for you. What can we do to come alongside? Breaking down any kind of this is our jurisdiction, this is the church's jurisdiction or area. We are here for people. What can we do? And as a result of it, I saw a community that was able to sort of navigate through a storm as numbers spiked and as things from a shutdown perspective continued on. And it was really awesome to see, and students and families were loved in real and profound ways, and it sort of helped them not just pull themselves up, but experience the true statement, we're all in this together.
See, when Carey Nieuwhof talks about, I'm a big Carey Nieuwhof fan, and when he talks about crisis is a great accelerator, kind of on the good and the bad, I think what you just said, and it got me thinking, because I can speak to this from fellowship standpoint and from High Street Nazarene, where you see, like, and you kind of went a different direction. You talked about people, the people you're trying to touch, minister to, reach, kids, schools, whatever, the church itself, families, where that all comes together. High Street early on, this was before you got here, stepped up big time and started doing meals and raising money and pulling resources together to go out to an organization, unfortunately, that's no longer existing because they got hit by COVID. And then Fellowship, I think over spring break last year, you might have heard the story, Chris, where they were trying to do 300, Lagunda School called them and said, hey, we need 300 meals each meal, so breakfast, lunch, and dinner every day for the week. Is there any way you guys could help us? Fellowship did it. Like Jeremy Hudson Grant, whoever, volunteers. I remember John Landis, Darren Cotter from the Turner Foundation. Various people got involved, and Fellowship did that. From our people, I think our resources to take care of 300 kids from Lagunda's meals every day, Monday through Friday. You guys did a bunch of stuff. Have you seen kind of, I was taking it more from a very individualistic approach. You guys are starting to take it more organizationally between church, school, families. Are you seeing more of that? How's that working CTC way? And
same. In the sense, I think that the conversations aren't about like any, like that kid's here or there. It's really just, I can remember reading like the quote from Robots, like see a need, fill a need, and it was just that simple. It was like, we need to know what do they need? When we were talking with our students, it wasn't like, what do you need? Do you need tutoring? Do you need? It wasn't about the academic part necessarily. It was just like, what do you need in general? What are the needs that you have as just a human being, and what can we do to help? I mean, that's just been our
And
way.
if you didn't know what we were talking about, this sounds like stuff in a third world country. This sounds like compassion
Yeah.
or
It
world
does.
vision or something like that. And part of me kind of rejoices. Like we're really getting to heart level human. We're going through the heart of a warrior. You're really stripping things down and looking at what's in a man's heart. Nothing to hide, nothing to fear, nothing to prove. Michael and Greg, I hope you like the love I'm giving you guys right now. But I mean, it's just interesting to hear it's all getting stripped down, bare basics, simplification, working together. What's a need? And like you said, not an academic need now, it's whatever that is.
Well,
And
some of the, I was thinking back about the whole suck it up or whatever type thing, but I mean, we don't want to discount the part that we feel like, once you can look back on this, and once the students and these teenagers can look back on this, if again you want them to make it through it though, they need to make it through it and not be broken because of it. But I tend to send out. I did this before COVID, but send out. It's some of my stuff is kind of corny, but it's called. What is it called? Moments at CTC, or Moments of Commitment. And so I send those out as an email to all the students, and usually it's always just been sort of an encouragement, and I put like a quote or something in there. And but the end of last year and this year, but last year I always I have a theme every year too, and last year's theme was grit. And I just carried it forward because I thought if there's anything we need, or these young kids to have, is grit. So I keep, on one end we're trying to say, what do you need? But at the same time, we're also encouraging that, like, remember, dig deep and really don't let things get you down to the point. If you need something, we help you, but you got to really be also after it yourself and get strong. This is going to still make you strong when in the end. So I mean, there is a little bit, not of suck it up, but a little bit of that thinking about this could still be making you strong.
So Steve, let's skip ahead a bit. So one of the questions I wanted us to talk about was, and obviously we all have our hope and place everything in the lap of who Jesus is.
Amen.
But knowing that things are tough now, and probably tougher than maybe any generation's dealt with, in a sense of, again, this is not like a school shooting at a school and wherever that would be, or this tragedy happened, but it's in this little pocket. It's nationwide, worldwide, community-wide, whatever. Where are the youth that we deal with now when they're 35, 40 years old, whatever? How can we hope and expect that they're going to be better than a 35 or 40-year-old today based on what they've gone through?
Well, it's all going to come down to their connection with Jesus. I mean, I think that, and that's kind of one of my philosophies of ministry is helping our youth to connect with Jesus, but also help them to connect with the church. I think that we got to do a better job of helping them to be acclimated into ministry. Helping them find their gifts and abilities, find places to get them plugged into ministry, or learning to be a part of. Even at High Street, we've got our youth are plugged into worship. We've got some of our youth that are participating in that, whether it be instruments. We've got kids that are involved with. But you see, laying all that groundwork, I mean, that's going to help build the future. I mean, we always say they're the leaders of tomorrow, but they're more than that. I mean, we've got to invest in our young people.
So with what you're saying, would you guys, and maybe just a quick yes if this is true, I don't want to put words in your mouth, but would you say you're having better conversations with youth today than you ever have based on the realities of our world?
I think it's person to person, group to group, but as a whole general statement, I think I can say yes.
Chris, what about you?
I wish I could say yes. I don't know
Yeah.
that I can. I feel like, it's just different conversations, but a little bit of the same flavor of the responsibility that you have as young people and who you're growing into be. I mean, I agree with what you said there, because it's been very, very important for all of my kids to be connected in some way, whether it be Young Life to their own,
School.
youth ministry, stuff in school. I mean, because even if, there's leadership's going to come out in some way, or form through their lives. And I'm always kind of preaching that a little bit to my kids. If my son Chandler is now recently engaged, and I'm just giving a quick example, but like he's down there at OU in the middle of some stuff that I didn't know. I mean, I've always heard stories, but I went down there and saw it myself. But when his girlfriend would come to visit him, and he would put an air mattress out in the living room for him to sleep in, and her to have his bed, and another person would be a roommate would be looking at that going, what are you doing? That's stupid, or something like that. And I would say that those are moments that you're leading, because you're showing people, and even if it's not immediate, it's something that's going to get people thinking later on, like, well, he was different. That's not something that's normal, and things like that.
It's funny. I'm just thinking. Obviously, I love the food and that program of culinary at CTC, and I was just thinking, gosh, how tough is that got to be for those students? I'm asking this, hypothetically, but it almost feels like that's going to be so tough for those students who are used to getting immediate feedback, people in the community coming in, talking to, like, they're getting none of that. There's no feedback. There's no serving people like me and Brian DeSantis and Tim Cheetah and people that come in there all the time from the community.
Yeah.
And, so I think every time we think, like, this is how tough it is for them, it's like, no, you forgot about this, or you forgot about this. And, I think we all know how difficult it is for anybody working in a school right now. I've said the two places I really bleed are youth ministry people and people running camps and retreat centers who's flipping the bill for them seeing nobody. Well, let me jump to the one question.
Hey, one thing I would like to plug: we are trying to reopen
Jaguar
the
Run?
restaurant. First week of February. I think we're going to be back open.
You gotta take me there.
Well, Chef Dave, hey, if you hear this, I know you missed Thanksgiving, so you got to have a Thanksgiving meal planned this year, because I try to never miss that Friday before Thanksgiving CTC Thanksgiving meal. So bring it back for me. I'm giving you a plug. Take care of that. They have the best chocolate chess pie in the world.
I don't know that I've ever had chocolate chess
It's
pie.
pecan pie without the pecans. Add chocolate. It's unbelievable.
The greatest cookie in the world. I know
Yeah,
that sounds
it's their
simple, but the chocolate
cupcakes.
chip cookie is like the greatest.
I will
cookie
treat
in
you
the
and
world.
Steve because you've never been, or
Yeah, you deserve it.
I have a good friend who works at CTC.
I'll be fine.
He'll pick up the tab.
I'll
so
pick up the
There you
tab.
go.
So one of the things I wanted to ask you guys was, I told you one of my favorite Bible verses is 1 Corinthians 11:1. Follow my example as I follow the example of Christ.
Yeah.
What would you say? And this is I'm sorry, this is toot your horn time. What would you want to encourage the kids, your staff, your volunteer leaders to follow your example in this time to say this is how we're going to have victory in COVID? So maybe give it about a 30-second answer each of you, whoever wants to go first.
Well, I mean, personally, my life verse is Philippians 1:21. For me to live is Christ, and to die is gain. With our young people today, they're all into social life, and they're into gaming, and
I can't relate to that in my house at all.
yeah, I know. I mean, it's a way to connect. I mean, I game.
I don't, but they
well, I have.
Yeah, they do some
but anyways,
phone stuff.
But I think that teaching our kids, that's really what life is about.
dying to self.
Yeah, dying to self.
Okay. Cody, what about you? What's kind of the 30-second answer to how would you want people to follow your example?
Two things. I love Paul's words at the end of his testimony in chapter 3, when he says, I want to know Christ and the power of his resurrection. I want to share in his sufferings. I want to become like Jesus in his death. When I met Jesus, I wanted to know more of him all the time. And I'm not really tooting my horn there. That's a Holy Spirit
No, I told
thing.
you to, but I told you to toot your horn, so.
But as I know and spend time with Jesus, that's what I want to do. And so if students can learn anything from me, volunteers, leaders, it's this desire as we know more of him to share in all that he is. The other thing that I would say really quickly is authenticity. I'll always be this short, skinny kid with a speech impediment who's made a ton of silly choices in his life and doesn't deserve to be here by any merit of my own. But God has been so gracious to me, and he's boasted power in my weakness more times than I could ever remember. And so if a teenager emulates this sort of willingness to be embraced by God, warts and all, insufficiencies and all, and be used by him, knowing that you can't hide your junk and your stuff the way that I can't hide my stuff and my junk, that'd be an awesome takeaway.
You know what's great, both of you guys, and we'll get to Chris in a minute, you both jumped to very personal eyes fixed on the Lord type of, it reminds me of Philippians 3, eyes on the goal, nothing's, stopping me kind of as I go forward with the Lord type of thing. I think of Kyle Idleman, who's big in your world down at Southeast. And I've watched many of his sermons during his period.
Yeah.
And he had COVID and preached from his home, and it happened to be titled about home. And, I'm thinking if I'm a person at Southeast, I'm growing in Christ during the season because I'm watching my pastor.
Sure.
And I think that I love that you both have gone there. And now I've set Chris up. He's almost got to say the same thing. But I think that's important right now. And, you talk about your upbringing that way. And, we've had people we get to model lives after.
Sure.
And that, hopefully that doesn't put pressure on you guys, but that allows you to pull up the bootstraps and say, I'm going to own this time for people are going to watch, people are going to follow my example. And Chris, what about you? How do you respond to that question?
Well, I remember the first thing that came to my mind when I thought of that type of question was just, at some point in time, even when we go back and think about what we talked about as me starting into my relationship with Christ, at some point in time, and I was already as a teacher, so he put me there, and everything came back to just discipling. And when I've talked to my own kids, and I've told them, I said, I believe that my job, and so if I was asking anyone to follow me in an example, is to find people, as many people as you can, to disciple. Yeah. And it's not because I have all the answers or anything like that, because I know I don't. But it started, in my belief that my first place was to disciple in my own home. Yeah. And so raising my own, kids, and as many as God decided to give me. So I told people, they'd say, how come you have so many kids? And I'd go, because that's how many God gave me. Yeah. And I'm going to disciple every one of them. That's good. And that's the start. And then I happen to be in a job where I can, to a point, despite what people would say, I can disciple.
You have done that more than a number of times as a lifestyle.
I've got myself in trouble even, but I would choose to disciple, students through even just them seeing me as an example, things that I will do, choices that they'll see me make, messages that I'm sent, caring that I'll show towards them. Everything that I would do is in an effort to disciple. And I tell my kids that is going to be hopefully something that they will someday be looking for people that they can pour into as well. And again, not because I know it all, but because that they don't have to, because God will use them in the way He wants to.
You know what's encouraging about what you're saying? I think about, if I think about my three boys, if I could get them to be around you, any of you individually, I think you've been around my boys some, Chris, but I think about your locker rooms. You're all in different locker rooms. There's 4 here based on Chris being in 2. I think of Young Guns. I think of my board. I think of the guys I know you're connected to through your churches, not at Upper Arlington Lutheran, a little too far away, but one of the blessings, you guys don't know about this, but with Chris's first group is his old boss and him have been in a group for years together, Mark Kloppenstein. So it's kind of, they were leading Northeastern High School together. But I think any of those people, if I could put them around you, or guys that could mentor you or whatever, do I know that they would be better off for being around each of you? 100%. So whatever that looks like, certainly we're talking more about you investing in others, but anybody investing in you is going to get that back. Let's transition. Last question and we'll be done. 2021. I've heard people say, we maybe have said it, that 2021 is most likely to look more like 2020 than 2019 or 2022. We have to be okay with that and embrace it. I think we were talking in our locker room today. I think most every guy acknowledged they know more people with COVID right now than they have at any point in the time that this has been going on. I know whole families with COVID right now. Yeah. I sent a note to about 30 guys yesterday, 2 wives. It was actually to the wives group about a blood drive we're having a little bit, and 2 families said our whole family has COVID right now. So 2021, I think, has hope. I think there's ways it's going to be better, but it's going to look more like 2020 than not if you compare it to other years. What is your hope? What are you excited about? What's a theme for you? We've been talking a lot in gathering circles about that one word phrase for the year, that whatever. I know I'm focusing on the mind of Christ. I want to better grasp Romans 12, 1 and 2. I've been listening to a lot of Jenny Allen. Hopefully that makes my man card stronger, not worse. But
good stuff.
She runs a ministry called If Gathering, which is similar title, Gathering. But just really, what does it mean to have the mind of Christ? So that's kind of where I am.
So good.
Encouraging people in that, trying to live that out. What is the hope for you? Maybe each of you can go for like a minute. What is your hope, expectation? Where are you excited about what 2021 holds? Steve?
Well, presently just staying connected, connection with one another as a church, growing in Christ, but being new at the church, just connecting with people, and I think it's just so vital for us, to remain there, connecting with Christ and connecting with one another, and that's kind of what I'm looking at for 2021. Even looking beyond the COVID and all of that, even through, we do life groups and we're still trying to stay connected with that, but then you have to deal with the issues of fear and when things started to rise or increase. It's a reality. It's here. It's something we're going to have to live with. I think eventually, I think we'll see some changes. I think people will begin to understand the reality of it and be okay with it.
Yeah.
But I think the fear that we've created is just really created a lot of division.
It's true.
And the enemy's been behind that.
Oh, yeah.
I've experienced it, in even in ministry. You got some that are say, "Hey, let's get together. It's a hoax," and then you got the other side that. But I think the reality is we still got to remain connected.
The key word you used there, and you said it multiple times, was connection.
Yeah.
I'm going to share with our board Friday 3 areas where I feel like the Lord really wants us as a ministry to double down. Mm-hmm. And it's neat, all 3 of them are relationship driven. It's getting ideally 2 new guys involved in locker rooms for each guy, thinking that way. It's doubling down on retreats, and we did these year in. Chris was a part of one, champions meetings, and I think ramping those up throughout the whole year this year. I'm excited about what you said because I think that's definitely where we need to be as a ministry. So, Chris, what about you?
Well, my mind goes to, there's things that I've said that I feel like, hey, I was saying this a little bit, long before COVID hit, to my family. I feel like I focus on that. It doesn't matter what the situation is that we're dealing with in the world. My job remains the same. Mm-hmm. My job is to still be there. In my daily prayer, I pray that God opens my eyes to see what He wants me to do, and that I am able to be His hands and feet, and
Yes.
I can do the things that He expects me to do. And so there's things that He's going to expect me to do in the time of COVID, and there's things that He expects me to do when it's not the time of COVID.
That's right. Mm-hmm.
So that part is consistent with me. And even when, you know all too well, I've gone through, pretty recent, just tough times. People in my house had COVID
stuff,
and had all kinds of things to deal with. But as I'm dealing with those, that's where He has me. He has me dealing with those things and hopefully seeing how I'm supposed to deal with those things appropriately and that glorifies Him, and then also to move on and see the things that He wants me to do for others as well.
Wow.
It's good stuff.
Cody?
Very similarly, in 2021, I want to keep the main thing the main thing.
Mm-hmm.
Apart from me, Jesus said, you can do nothing. He's the vine, we're the branches. Methods change, forms change. We got to be adaptable, resilient, pressing forward. But the Great Commission is still the Great Commission. We're making disciples. We're being present in people's lives. We're baptizing. We're teaching. We're reminded that He's with us to the very end of the age. So as a result of that, we're called to be salt and light in a world that seems more divided and hateful than ever. In the midst of all these things, I want to be reminded the main things are still the main things. In addition, my daughter's coming. I've got 3 boys, and I'm so glad that I'm a boy dad, but I'm going to be a girl dad
it's a
now, which is
beautiful
going to be
thing.
transformational. I'm super excited about it. I'm praying that God would make me the girl dad that I need to be in 2021.
Amen. I'm reminded, Chris, as Chris was talking, some things he said kind of made me think of this, that there's a picture I was reminded of today from our 2 guys in our conversation. I don't know where that needs to go, Seth. If it's there, is that seen, or does it go to that camera?
Yeah.
Stay right here.
Back to the other one.
So there's this image, and it's of a man holding out over like a cliff, and he's got this rock on his back that the woman can't see. I'm assuming maybe they're married, And then she's trying to hold on, but there's a snake that's getting ready to get her. I don't know if you guys
Yeah,
have
I
ever
saw
seen
it
this
today.
picture. It's a great picture. And that picture was just such a great reminder for me that we don't know what other people are going
right.
through. You don't know. He doesn't know probably that snake's there. She doesn't know that there's a big boulder on his back. They're both dealing with terrible stuff. And by the way, she's hanging off a cliff and he's got her by the hand. And I think for us to just remember, have that kind of compassion, eyes to see, I like to say often, and ears to hear. And like you said, Chris, the job doesn't change. So how do we re-up the ante to really be compassionate? And I listened to a podcast with Andy Stanley recently, and he's got a new book out called Better Decisions, Less Regrets, something like that. Maybe I'll get a free copy since I'm promoting it right now. But anyway, his fifth question, there's 5 questions. Probably not, that's true. Somebody help give me that book. He poses 5 questions in the book that we should be asking to help frame our decisions. And the fifth one, well, the third or fourth one I love is what is the wise thing to do. But number 5 was the first 4 were all ones that kind of, as you did them, they make you better. The fifth one was all about sacrifice. And it was, what does love require me? And I've been thinking about that since I heard that podcast last week, that in any given situation in 2021, what will love look like for me? What will that require? Because when you're saying what will love require, it's a cost. There's a price to be paid.
Right.
And if we can just kind of do that, look with empathy. My wife was talking to a friend recently, and they were really frustrated and just distraught about a lot of things. And Garrett said, I just want to say to this person, like, get off Facebook. Like, don't focus on social. And you know, I think it's not really a social media thing, but it's what happened to Peter when he walked on water. He was great as long as his eyes were fixed on Christ.
Yep.
As soon as he looked at the waves, and I know it for me, I'm sinking.
Yep.
So let me pray for you guys. It's a closing time. Seth's like, yeah, Jeff, that was about 10 minutes ago, but I knew with 4 of us, we had to go, an hour. So let me pray for you guys. Father God, just thanks for Steve and Chris and Cody, and just thanks for bringing them to us. None of these 3 guys were from here. None of them had a thought, a clue, a desire that said, I'm growing up someday and going to Springfield, Ohio. But you saw fit to bring them here, to allow us to hook arms, to sometimes hang off a cliff for one another potentially, and to just go about kingdom business on the offensive with the armor of God, and do a great work, partnering up with you. And just pray that they would make a huge impact on the lives of kids, their own certainly, and those in schools and the church world and the community. And just thanks for Eric and Seth just blessing us here and providing this outlet to speak of what you're doing. Until next time, in Jesus' name, we love you.
Amen.
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 Thanks, friends. Good to be with you again. We'll be back in a couple weeks.